And I remind all of those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to the wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable, and that conduct will be not tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise that they should leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making those remarks. Councillor Mark Sutherland, would you like to do the welcome to come?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of my family and my community, I'd like to say Yama de Gomoroi, Walla Bagani Arni Winungalawa, Lambo Murray, Marumara, Ngale Down, Dilia Yanbali, Garina Marius Gaingol Gomoroi Ngamlanginda, Winalanginda, Winangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our families and our communities across northwest New South Wales, making sure that we acknowledge that we are on Gomeroi country and we pay respects to elders both past and present who have cared and will always care for this country. I'd also like to quickly acknowledge that we're just about to enter into Reconciliation Week. An important week, that's marked by two monumental days. Thursday we have National Sorry Day, and next Friday, we have Mabo Day. Two key decisions, that have both been led by government, leading the theme around be brave and make change. And I'm excited to be part of the council that's going to continue to work in a way that's going to better support outcomes for Aboriginal people and our wider community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. I'd ask all councillors to stand for the prayer, and I'd ask Pastor James Adele if he would come to the lectern and review his duty. Thank you, Pastor.
Yeah, Almighty God, we thank you for the riches of community and for the natural and human resources of our Tamworth region. We honour the men and women of this council as they govern and serve the people. We ask for courage and wisdom for righteous decisions to nourish and prosper this region. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor.
There you go.
Councillors, I'll now call for apologies. There is no apologies. Everybody's here, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item 2, and community consultation. Councillors, tonight we've got 3 people wishing to speak, and I'll call firstly John Crisula. I've said that right?
Close enough.
Close enough. Come to the... Now, for the 3 speakers that are going to speak tonight, come to the... normally if it's a development matter, we would ask if you had made any political contributions to any of the councillors or the staff. This is a development matter that will be considered by the state, but just for transparency, I'd just ask if each of the speakers, when they come to the thing tonight, whether they could just make a point of whether they have or have not given political donations to any of the councillors here tonight.
Sure thing. I haven't given any political donations to anyone here present. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I just wanted to say I'm here to represent the Hills of Gold Preservation Group as their president, to represent the people and the community members of Nundle, Hanging Rock and Timor. Wanted to say, first of all, thank you and congratulations to your team, Gina, and a team for putting together a 9-page document that spoke to us and spoke to us with the truth and the concerns that we have been addressing and wanting addressed, and we thank the team for that. We really appreciate Tamworth Council for giving the time to your team to allow them to thoroughly assess this development application. It's important as we as a society move into the transition to renewable energies, that we not only do it respectfully, but that we get the location correct and right. And it's obvious to us that after 4 years of consultation from ENGIE, that this location is still not right. There are still problems with access, whether it's through the Devil's Elbow bypass or Head of Peel Road. There will still be problems with to heritage and cultural areas of heritage and cultural significance. There'll be problems with from a natural environment perspective, and problems still associated with non-associated landholders and neighbours of agreements not yet signed. And this is after 4 years, ladies and gentlemen. It's also important with developments of this type that there is a social licence. And I'm here to say that a social licence doesn't just mean a handful of people that hope to benefit financially and their friends and their workers supporting this project. A social licence means that not everybody accepts it, but the people that are going to be most impacted accept this proposal. This is not the case at Hanging Rock and Nundle. The majority of non-associated dwellings have yet to sign neighbourhood agreements. Like I said, we commend, Hills of Gold Preservation commend this 9-page document. We hope it serves as a reminder to the DPI and the Independent Planning Commissioner that not all renewables are equal. And as the next few years will show, this council and this state and this country, there'll be plenty of opportunities to place renewable energy within society, and it's important that we get them in places that have least environment and social impact. Look, in closing, I just want to say that I hope that this council endorses this draft letter to be presented to our people. And, you know, I think the most important thing is that tonight history will show that you guys stood with your community members in sharing the same concerns, and I truly hope that tonight the council does accept this draft letter and the recommendations in it and the concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'd call on the second speaker on the list tonight, and that's Ian Worley. Ian, if I could just ask you the same question.
I haven't made any political donations to anybody on council, and I have no pecuniary interest in this project at all. Yama, firstly I'd like to acknowledge the lands that we're on today, and that they are those of the Kamilaroi people, and they are under their enduring guardianship. And I'd like to acknowledge all Aboriginal elders past, present, Aboriginal people here today, and those who will take us into the future. My name's Ian Worley. I'm a Kamilaroi man, and I'm a long-time resident of Nundle, and I live there with my wife, my children and my extended family. And I'd also like to recognise that this Thursday is National Sorry Day, and it is an opportunity for us all to acknowledge and raise awareness of the history and continued effect of forced removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from their families, communities and culture. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I am speaking in support of Council's continued rejection of ENGIE's Hills of Gold wind farm. My extended family and I are directly, negatively impacted by this proposed development. Our properties sit well under 3 kilometres and look directly onto a significant part of the proposed development. Whilst I know this has not been voted on as of yet, I would like to acknowledge and thank the Council for allowing their staff to practice due diligence in terms of fully evaluating the proposal and allowing them to make their recommendation based on this comprehensive evaluation. It is a massive document, but Council has recognised the significant impact of such an industrialised development in a rural area and have fully participated in the review and evaluation process. Council have to be commended for allowing the time for this. Excuse me. Regardless of the spin ENGIE decide to put forward, the local majority clearly do not want this development to go ahead. It is simply the wrong place. And to anyone who has taken the significant amount of time necessary to read every document associated with this proposal, it is clear that it is a completely inappropriate development for this area. And the negative impacts of this development are too great on our community. Council have discovered this through their diligent evaluation of the proposal and the lack of detailed information provided and constant change of the development. ENGIE are operating without a social licence for this development, acting against their own code of ethics and values. Their own evaluation shows that the majority of submissions regarding this development are against it. It doesn't matter how it is broken down, be it at a local level or holistic. The majority are against the development. Saying it has received the highest number of support submissions of a development is intentionally misleading and does not qualify the statement with the fact that the objections outweigh them significantly. And this flies in the face of Engie's own principles, and I quote, behaving honestly and promoting a culture of integrity. Statements like this are intentionally misleading and they make a mockery of the company's ethical standards and fall far from showing integrity. Without majority support, without council endorsement, there is clearly no social licence for this project, yet a French multinational, multi-billion-dollar company continues to try and force itself onto a rural community in Australia who quite clearly are saying no to its advances. Shame on Engie for its lack of ethics in this situation. Even the report submitted to council fails to acknowledge that koalas are now an endangered species, yet this French multinational is intent on clearing 36 hectares of habitat for koalas in an effort to force this project on a township that has not given them consent to do so. There is no social licence. Engie's insistence that it should be able to force its project onto a community without social licence has meant a significant number of people have had to research their rights, has meant the formation of a volunteer group who have had to invest a significant amount of time into trawling through this flawed proposal and continue communications with relevant bodies. It's meant council have had to dedicate hours to the analysis of their flawed document, yet Engie insists on telling the community it is going ahead and construction will start in 2023. Yet there's been no recommendation. This is simply propaganda spread to create confusion in the community. It's dragged on too long. The proposal keeps adjusting its timeline as it runs into more and more issues. The original had the construction starting in 2020. So as a community, we've been at this since 2007.
Then I'll have to get you to wind up.
Okay then. Yep. So council have clearly and succinctly pointed out the multitude of flaws in the proposal and have said it's not appropriate location. Councillors, I implore you to adopt the recommendation and letter as proposed, and clearly stating council's continuing objection to the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I'd call to the lectern the third speaker tonight, Brian Tomlin. No. You haven't given anything. Thanks, Brian.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to address the council on this important issue, and congratulations to the council and the staff on the professionalism of their comprehensive analysis on the project and its implications. And I'm speaking tonight as a long-term resident of the mountain where this project is located. I've got a pretty good understanding of the location and how it works. The issue that's concerned me since the development was announced was the potential impact on hydrology of the mountain. The potential reduction of water flows into the Peel River. Despite the need for comprehensive and geotechnical and hydrological analysis, which has been raised in submissions, the proponents haven't addressed it. The problem still exists. And an understanding of how the mountain works gives a pretty good appreciation of the potential problems created by such a development. And it's no coincidence that the ridge where it's located used to be referred to as the New Guinea Tops because it was always wet and rainy. The high rainfall, the mist, the drizzle, the winter snow maintains very high levels of soil moisture. And all that moisture eventually filters down through the strata and feeds the tributaries of the Upper Peel and the tributaries of the Hunter and the Menning Valleys. Indeed, the mountain has the ability to maintain flows in the Peel River for up to 2 years in a dry spell. But what we don't know with the development is what will be the impact of 50 to 60, 300 to 400 cubic metres of concrete for the tower foundations, the concrete surfaces for the infrastructure, cut and fill for the compaction for the foundations, cut and fill and compaction for the hard stands, the working areas, the crane pads, and for the compaction for the roads. With all this and the removal of the native vegetation, the speed of runoff will increase and the ability of the mountain to absorb the moisture will be inhibited. And the underground water, which is essential for sustaining the flows in the Peel River, in all the rivers and particularly the Peel, will be inhibited. The proponent has underestimated the impact of the rainfall. We've used figures from Nundle, which has a mean long-term mean of about 830 millimetres. The private gauge on Morrison's Gap Road, at one end of the development, has a 35-year average of 1,266 millimetres, and at Nycooma at the other end it's around 1,500 millimetres. So until there's a comprehensive hydrological and geotechnical assessment undertaken, the precautionary principle should apply and the development should be rejected. Now the other issue which I have some experience with is bushfires. The council does address it. There's potential with the wind towers for restrictions on aerial firefighting on a fire approaching Hanging Rock Village from the southwest. And that's an unacceptable risk to one of the most vulnerable villages in New South Wales. The availability of water will be severely affected by the project. The large dam on Nycooma will not be available because of the infrastructure around it, which will mean a considerable lift for helicopters to get water to the top of the mountain. And lift is a killer for helicopters.
Ryan, I'll have to ask you to bring
So,
up.
the question, the development, the wisdom of such a development in a location on one of the highest ridges of the Great Dividing Range, subject to landslips, has to be questioned. And these points have reinforced the council's assessment that the project is in the wrong location. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Councillors, that brings us to the end of community consultation. We'll move on to item 3, which is minutes from the previous meeting. Can I have somebody move that? Councillor Burke, second to Councillor Mears. Did you want to speak to those minutes? Anyone wants to speak against those? What's in the minutes? Anybody want to make comment about the minutes from the last meeting? No, I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Disclosures of interest is item 4 on the agenda. I'll ask, is there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 7.1, I'd like to declare a less than significant non-pecuniary interest as contained in our council's submission to planning is reference to the Crown Reserve managed by council, and as my employer, Department of Planning and Environment, Crown Lands, would be involved in that matter. I'd just like to obviously declare that less than significant non-pecuniary interest. I won't obviously have anything, I won't be processing any requests by the proponent in relation to that, so I will remain in the chamber and participate in discussion.
Councillor Brooks-Houghton.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to make a disclosure of interest, non-pecuniary, less than significant interest in terms of item 7.1 as well. Whilst working for C7, which is a local marketing communications agency, I worked with the proponent on stakeholder engagement, marketing and communications, and as such I had a working relationship with the project management team, and I will be leaving the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southwell. Any further disclosures of interest? We'll move on to item 5. There's no Merrill minute. Item 6, there is no notice of motion. So we'll move to open council reports. And the first report is environmental and planning. And we have item 7.1. Could I have somebody move the recommendation? Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Mears, do you wish to speak to the recommendation? No? Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Councillors, are there anyone that would like to make a comment, speak in relation to the recommendation? Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Hills of Gold Wind Farm project has been dragging on for 4 long years, consuming valuable physical, human and financial resources. I am a supporter of environmental sustainability, including renewable energy. However, I will not be supporting this project and will be supporting the motion. This project is counterproductive and has damaging long-term effects on our environment and communities. The proposed site has proved to be totally inappropriate with significant negative impacts on road infrastructure, heritage and biodiversity. Already there has been significant destructive, unauthorised land clearing. Further destructive clearing of old growth timber will be required for the transmission line, posing further negative environmental impacts. I request this point be added to TRC's letter of objections regarding this, and I'll come back to that. The negative impacts of this inappropriate site far outweigh any renewable energy benefits. The proponent has failed to satisfactorily address the majority of the many issues raised in the public submissions. Our communities need closure and certainty. For 4 years, this project has consumed valuable volunteer, Tamworth Regional Council and departmental time, staff and resources. Resources could be better utilised progressing achievable and meaningful projects for the common good. I fully support the recommendation, but would ask if we could add the negative impacts of clearing that will be required for the transmission line.
Councillor Tickle, do you want to move that as an amendment, or do you want to ask the mover and the seconder if they'd like to add that?
Yes, I will move that.
We'll probably need some better wording, but...
The wording is to add to our letter of objections the negative impacts of clearing required for the transmission lines.
Would the mover, as a mover, would you accept that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
And the seconder? Yes, so that can be put in, please. Other councillors wish to make a comment? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I find it amazing that we are virtually repeating the concerns expressed in Council's last submission about this project, and indeed the proponents' responses have been scant on detail in relation to Council's submission and those made by many concerned residents. It's not good enough for a proponent of such a large project to simply say we'll address many of the problems after approval. The impacts on public infrastructure are profound, particularly to the area that the proponent proposes to bulldoze for a private track, and there is no certainty about the way the proponent intends to address the ongoing issues to our road infrastructure, be it Morrison's Gap Road, Barry Road, the roads within the village of Nundle or Lindsay's Gap Road, or indeed the New England Highway. And I note the subsidence on Barry Road and the proposed track that may go through that section of land at the Devil's Pinch up to Hanging Rock is likely to suffer the same sort of impacts from such a large-scale track that would be required through that area. There is no Indigenous land use agreement or agreement from the local Aboriginal Land Council, and I believe we've been misinformed when the proponent's agent said there was. Most of all, it is significant that considerable clearing of precious native vegetation has already occurred without approval in an attempt to mitigate roadblocks to the project. My concern about this project is that you are never going to fix the environment by destroying the vegetation in sensitive areas like Nundle and Hanging Rock, and just how environmentally friendly is a renewable energy project if it needs to destroy significant areas of irreplaceable native vegetation. Furthermore, there is no remediation plans at the end of life of this project, and we could assume that at the end of the infrastructure, at the end of the project's life, the infrastructure remains in situ to scar the environment forever. Some of the existing councillors will not be around to see the end of this project's life if approved, but we cannot leave such a large legacy for our community to address when we are gone. I generally appreciate renewable energy projects like Councillor Tickle. There is a wind farm proposal for Bendemeer, for example, that seems to have many community members on side. But I believe that this project has lost its social licence and the irreversible impact and the final outcome, and considering the irreversible impact, and the final outcome should be reflected in the decision of our state's planning department to reject this project.
Thank you, Councillor Ryder. Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with what my fellow councillors have said, and I just would like to very briefly say I applaud the staff for their constant and repetitive thoroughness in going through documents and having to come up with the arguments and asking for more information, because without that thoroughness we wouldn't be standing here today questioning whether or not this could go ahead or not.
Thank you. Councillor Betts, did you wish to say anything? Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm not going to repeat what my fellow councillors have said, but I fully support their comments with regards to the specific problems with regards to this particular project, and fully endorse the draft letter amended as we have it by Councillor Tickle to be sent. And I have a real problem in terms of the fundamental difference between regions and cities, and how it's the regions who have to do the heavy lifting with regards to renewables, to providing abatements, to providing offsets, and doing it in communities, small communities like Nundle and other communities outside the renewable energy zone that have broken down the fabric of those communities. And for what? For a foreign company owned externally, obviously, it coming into our economy because obviously it's worth them doing the investment. And the way in which they engage with community and the contracts that they form with them are done in a secret nature, so that one landholder doesn't know what the previous landholder or the next landholder is going to get. And it becomes a wedging factor once you get critical mass, that you can end up paying more for the last people potentially, because you need those last ones to fall across the line. And it also disappoints me with regards to Engie and the proponents that their fundamental problem with regards to the access to the site was a key reason for being rejected the first time. And that hasn't been addressed in the second proposition. And in speaking to a forensic agronomist who had some involvement very early on in this whole project, that person was was confounded to think that fundamental issue had never been addressed, and was surprised that they were still wanting to take a route that was just impassable and improbable and owned by Crown lands that would not obviously be favourable to that. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and it's good to hear our fellow councillors.
Further debate? Councillor Mead, would you like to close the debate, or would you happy to leave it as it sits?
Mr Mayor.
Councillors, that being the case, I will put the recommendation. Those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Those people that have come in to listen to that debate, Don't feel that you'd be rude if you want to leave.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, councillors. Thank you. We'll see you there.
It's everyone.
Can somebody, this
Yeah,
council...
Paul. Thanks, PK.
Hey, he's changing the chair.
Thank you. Councillors, we now move on to item 8, which is infrastructure and services, and the first matter there is 8.1. Could I have somebody, Councillor Rodder, move that recommendation? Somebody to second it? Councillor Sutherland? Councillor Rodder, would you like to speak to that?
Just very quickly, Mr Mayor, this certainly support this request, and we'll do so with the one at 8.3 as well, because of that's going to be a super weekend. That week leading up and the June long weekend will be super for baseball, for gymnastics and hockey. I guess the only question I would have of the staff are that we're going to fit all these people in to accommodation locally. It's a lot of people that are coming to Tamworth, and I don't think we've ever had that many people here at once. Other than obviously country music.
To have, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rodder, one of the great benefits having the wonderful city that we have is the amount of accommodation that we do have, and if we do have a problem with it, it is a good problem to have. Somebody to speak against? Nobody wishes to speak against? Anyone wish to speak in favour or make comment? Councillor Southwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, similar to my fellow Councillor Rodder, I'd just like to say how fantastic is this. This actual event has been operating for 50 years, attracting 1,000 participants and spectators from not only New South Wales but Queensland and other states, and it will bring about $700,000 into our economy. Fantastic. I wish all the participants the best of luck. I'm in favour of the recommendation, and mostly I hope the participants and spectators have great fun within the Tamworth region. Thank you.
Further comment, councillors? There being no further comment, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 8.2. Could I have somebody move that recommendation, please? Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Berg. Councillor Coates, do you want to speak to that? Anyone want to speak against the recommendation? Do you want to speak against the recommendation?
I had a question, but I'm not sure when I can ask that.
Is it a question or speaking against?
Not speaking against, just a question about it.
Anyone want to speak against the recommendation? Further comment, now you can make
Sorry, further comment. I just had a question around why this road is happening now. I'm obviously reading through the report, just trying to get an understanding, if we could, from the director around this, why is this happening now? Like, is it something we hadn't planned for originally, or is it just part of this next stage that we're undertaking, that we are building this road now? Is it something that we've looked at it and gone, hang on, we should really have that road in there? It's something we didn't do originally. Just a bit more information around the why this is.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Southwell, we applied for funding to construct the access road into the intermodal, off Goddard Lane into the intermodal, and we were successful in receiving funding from the federal government to provide that access to the intermodal. The funding agreement only covered to the end of the intermodal boundary, but as owners of the land and opening the Gateway Park up for sale and development through our project control group, we took on board the recommendation from the staff to extend that road and open up stage 4, which logically comes after stage 3. So that's what we'll do. We'll open up stage 4, and then we'll be looking at stages 5, 6 and 7, and on we go.
So there could be potentially more roads of 5, 6 and 7?
Absolutely.
For you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I could say that, Councillor Southwell, the reason we do that is obviously because we want to maintain as much flexibility around the configuration of lots and so on in this precinct as it evolves over time. You could go in and do a complete subdivision plan, have all the roads dedicated, but then if you want to change something, you've then got to undedicate it, resume it, and then put the road somewhere else. So we typically do it as we understand what the development's going to look like and how we want to configure the lots moving forward.
Thank you.
Further comment? Further comment? I'll just make one little comment. I think it's great that that we're moving forward so well with this, and the progress within this precinct is just great news for Tamworth. So, councillors, there being no further comment, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move from there to item 8.3, Country Capital Cup fee waiver request. Councillor Rotto is mover, seconded Councillor Burke. Councillor Rotto, do you wish to speak to this?
Just quickly, Mr Mayor, yes, I did refer to it being a super weekend. The only thing we're probably going to be lacking is fireworks, so but I'm looking forward to seeing the participants at this, baseball and hockey, for that super weekend, and I'm sure that they, following on from what Councillor Southwell said, I'm sure that people will enjoy themselves while they're here.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Further comment? Councillor Southwell.
Just a question again, sorry for all the questions tonight. Just in terms of, I am supportive of waiving this fee, but I just wondered how we got to that actual amount of 10,000 given all the fees that are involved with this particular event. Is there any explanation as to why that particular amount?
Paul, you can answer that question.
I can answer that.
You can?
Paul Kelly.
Paul Kelly, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, the fee, we have a $40,000 bucket each year for that funds, and most of the fee waivers we do throughout, or over the last 3 or 4 years, have never exceeded the $10,000. Last year we did exceed that for that gymnastics event, but that was purely because of COVID impact and the lack of sporting events. We had some excess dollars remaining, but this year we're not, and we're pretty tight, and we want to try to cap it to around that $10,000.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Burke.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Could I just have clarification whether it is a fee waiver, which the notes say that it's not, it's actually a subsidy. I think that's really important in terms of the profitability of the TR, Tamworth Regional Entertainment Centre as well, but also I think that a subsidy is something that it can be really targeted. If we start having waivers for the amount of different user groups that we have for our entertainment centre and other venues, and setting precedents, that could be of a huge concern. I know that we have a bucket of 40 grand, but I think the expectation from communities can flow on if we actually use the word waiver rather than subsidy.
What I said, Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy for the councillors to change the wording of the recommendation. The use of subsidiser, because the entire fee is not being waived, only it's been, so we could say part waiver rather than subsidy, if you like. I guess the staff use the word subsidy because it's only part of the fee, so it's only 10,000 out of the 20. But we could call it a part fee waiver if you want.
I'm not seeking to have the motion altered. I just wanted it on the record that we coin it that way. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Further comments? Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Only to say that it's wonderful to see so many participants being able to visit our city, and indeed for those within our own Tamworth Regional Council area having the opportunity to compete at these levels. We're all held back, and particularly sporting groups and others, with COVID, and this is a wonderful opportunity for them all to participate. It also, once again, illustrates the economic benefits of tourism, which of course includes sports, conferences and events, and our regional city is well placed to host not only sporting but many other events, which is demonstrated by the continual use of all our facilities. So over the years we've developed those facilities, we continue to maintain them, and credit to the staff that maintain these facilities in the condition that they are, and also for the sporting groups themselves who often make a pitch to their peak body to host special events, not only on long weekends but throughout the year. So certainly support giving the gymnastics club and other sporting groups a leg up to help with their fees.
Further comment? Further comment? No further? Yeah. Councillors, just going on from Councillor Burke's comments, it is really a part fee waiver. It's not a full waiver. So we are subsidising it to that tune.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, the record will show that because the recommendation says subsidise.
Yeah, so the recommendation does say that. Thank you. Councillors, no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 8.4. Another mover, Councillor Betts. Seconded, Councillor Coates. Councillor Betts, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, just a brief comment, Mr Mayor. Having been on the Chappie Dam reference panel back councils right back into the Parry days, and the Dam Safety Act has put some huge imposts on the council, the community, and it's one of the classic examples of an unfunded mandate. By the way, I'll be supporting the recommendation, but it's just an example of unfunded mandates that are putting financial imposts on our council, and it's just fairly difficult to take. I know it's got to be done, and it's the history is that the actual requirements for the dam safety measures has increased all the time, which has had a financial impact on the council and the broader community. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Further comment? Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to ask the Director of Water if he knows, just out of curiosity, what sparked this particular change. Obviously there was in 2013 the review of the Dam Safety Act, which was the 1978 Act, and then there was the new Dam Safety Act in 2015 and the new regulator which happened. Was there an incident which actually sparked the need for some of these legislative changes that you're aware of throughout Australia or New South Wales, or is it just that they're bringing things up to speed? And also, the report highlights a range of gaps that we've got, and just wondered if the Director could explain what the process is from here with addressing those gaps.
Mr Mayor, why did the state review the dams legislation? I think there's two reasons. The first one, yes, there were a couple of incidents involving dams. They weren't significant, but there was a couple of incidents. But I think more importantly, there were some incidents where dam owners weren't complying with the regulations of the day, and the state wanted to make it more difficult for you not to comply, and also I think the state saw an opportunity to get some more money off dam owners and to reduce the amount of work they did to help dam owners and just become a pure regulator, and that's what they've done. The second question was in relation to the gaps that are they're not significant gaps, and we will work to fill those gaps and then supply them to the regulator at the appropriate time. Some of the more our Dungowan Dam is a bit harder to deal with at the moment because there is the proposal to build a new Dungowan Dam, and therefore we wouldn't be suggesting that council invest a lot of time and effort into trying to address some of the issues until those matters are absolutely resolved, whether the new dam's going to go ahead or it's not going to go ahead, and then council will have to see. We'll have to get some advice and direction from council about what we're going to do in long term for that.
Thank you.
Further comment? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you. Probably just more of a question. Presumably that those dam fees and charges would continue over beyond those financial years as well. So, and potentially increase as to if the current dam was not replaced by a new dam, that would probably see another 5 years or so of similar charges. Would that be correct to say?
Mr Mayor, that's correct. If New Dungowan Dam's built, then it's not owned by council, and we won't pay any more money in relation to Dungowan Dam. But if we do continue to own the existing Dungowan Dam, then those costs will increase. I should point out, Mr Mayor, that the government has in the legislation the capacity to charge dam owners, just give a flat fee for, and they have not decided not to impose that fee as yet, but they have that capacity to do that. So those charges are our internal charges at the moment. They don't include any payments to the government in terms of regulation or legislation.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillors, there being no further comment, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. We'll move on to Governance Strategy and Finance in item 9.1. Could I have someone move 9.1, please? Councillor Burke. Seconded, Councillor Southwell. Councillor Burke, would you like to make comment on that? Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Anyone wish to speak or make comment? No, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we move on to item 9.2, Council Investments. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Southwell, seconded Councillor Betts. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Southwell?
Yes, thank you. Just briefly, I'd just like to say it's great to see that within the report that we will have some better returns on our investments, and thank you to Cheryl Young for the solid foundations there within the report. Thank you.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Anyone wish to make comment? No, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 9.3, Annual Operational Plan Budget Variation Report. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Betts, would you like to speak to that? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? No? Anyone wish to make comment? There being no comment, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move then on to 9.4. Move Councillor Tickle, seconded Councillor Mears. Councillor Tickle, would you like to make comment on that?
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the staff for the sound financial management and the excellent record keeping and the reports, the detailed reports that we're presented with on a regular basis. I just had one query on one of the items of overrun, which was the staff leave. I've lost it now.
Leave paid on termination?
Leave on termination. Thank you. Which has been overrun by approximately 50% of the budget amount. So I wondered if the GM could please outline the reasons for this, because I'm sure there are plenty, and provide assurance, and also provide assurance that staff leave is being kept up to date in accordance with the local government policy, particularly in relation to accumulation of annual leave.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sure my diligent finance staff will give me a glare if I get something wrong here, but Councillor Tickle, you'd be aware that we've made a concerted effort in recent years to reduce our leave balances for our staff. It's a significant liability for the organisation when staff don't take their leave as it accumulates because it gets carried forward and obviously increases in value over time. We have an internal policy which allows staff to accumulate 8 weeks of annual leave a year, 8 weeks of annual leave in total, and have that essentially in the bank, and 13 weeks of long service leave. It's fair to say over the last 2 years during COVID, when nobody could go anywhere with any of their leave, that people chose not to take leave, and we've been lenient through that period because we figured at the end of the pandemic, when things opened up again and people having, I guess, had to suffer through the pandemic, that they would want to get away and actually utilise their leave for recreational purposes rather than just sitting around the home or maybe doing a bit of gardening and so on. So we certainly haven't been as diligent in enforcing the policy in the last 2 years, but this matter in fact was in front of the executive team today at our regular meeting, and there's going to be a concerted effort to again push staff to comply with the policy.
Thank you, Councillor Tickle. Anyone wish to speak against? Further comment? No further comment. I'll put the recommendation in 9.4. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. We'll move on to item 9.5. Could I have somebody move? Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Betts. Councillor Coates, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Being the council representative on the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, I obviously attended the last meeting, which was actually held at the function room at Tamworth Regional Airport. And I think a key for me for that day was a verbal report that was provided by the Commercial Director, John Summerlad, which included an update on the impact of COVID on services and the post-COVID operations, also as well as the safety and security at the airport, which was very comforting. I will say that in addition to that, the actual committee meeting discussed risk and improvement around other items such as IT, events and enterprise. Digging very deeply into that audit and risk and identifying improvements that can be done in most of the areas of council. So, very brief report, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? No? I'll put the item 9.5. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we now move on to community services, and we have item 10.1. I'd ask someone to move that. Councillor Mark Sutherland, someone to second it. Councillor Brooks Outwell. Councillor Sutherland, do you want to speak to the recommendation on the Regional Youth Council minutes?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. Firstly, just want to again commend the Youth Council on the amazing work they're able to do. The last Youth Council meeting was a really great meeting for young people of the Youth Council to be able to provide some direction in which they see for young people for the future. In particular, talking around the youth strategy that's being drafted up at the moment, and having young people buying into saying that looking for young people across our region to be able to have a voice and buy into that, and the staff in the work they've been able to do to support that. Really looking forward to seeing the outcomes in that space. Also was really awesome to see the Youth Council nominate and push for some inclusiveness and awareness training. Pride Month is coming up in June, and young people really pushing to get some more awareness and education in how to support all members of our community. And I think that training is really important for all of members of TRC staff and all members of the community, and really keen on conversations to see how we as councillors could participate in that kind of training. I know we're time poor, but I think it will be really beneficial. And finishing up with the announcement that the Youth Council, through the staff, have been able to receive $19,000 to support, getting young people involved through screen and radio, and starting up a radio station collaboration with UNE, having 10 young people from 16 to 24 participating in this program, finishing it with a Cert 3 in screen and media. I think is a great opportunity for young people and a great way to utilise the facilities that we have at the Tamworth Regional Youth Centre. So I fully support the recommendation and everything.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Further comment? Councillor Southwell.
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. Firstly, just to congratulate the Youth Council on their successful grant funding of the $19,000 for the Youth Radio project. I think that's fantastic to build confidence and skills in that particular area. So well done on that, and I look forward to hearing how that goes on the radio. And it's great to see that the Youth Council are working with Homes North in terms of their homeless and at-risk program. I just had a question for council staff in terms of I know we're not a housing provider, but as a council, what are we doing for homeless people in our community?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we are actually talking to Homes North with regards to a housing strategy which will incorporate both state government, Homes North, and other stakeholders across the community, and that's currently in development. But certainly what we are seeing is constraints in the market, but it's nothing unusual in comparison to other regions around New South Wales and Australia. So we're working diligently with regards to that, and we're already currently housing several workers, as you know, at our airport accommodation site. By doing so, that actually frees up housing in our community for social housing as well. So we're doing all possible at the moment, and we'll be coming back to council with what we further information with regards to the housing strategy. Both the Director, Gina, and I will come back to council with regards to that.
Thank you. Further questions? There being no further questions, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move on to item 10.2, Central Northern Regional Library. Could I have a mover and a second? Moved Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Southwell. Councillor Coates, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In addition to the report that the councillors have actually received, I would like to highlight a couple of things that which I feel we've got a couple of staff members that should be recognised for the work that they've done and the positions they've been appointed to. Number one is Kay Delahunt, who is the Manager of Culture and Community Services for TRC, and she's actually been appointed to the Library Council of New South Wales. And the council is the governing body for the state library, so that's quite a significant position to hold, as well as promoting and maintaining the library and information services for the people of New South Wales. The council also advises the Minister and local authorities on policy and administration. Kay is also the new chair of the Public Libraries Consultative Committee, so she's going to have a fairly big say in what's going on with our libraries, not just locally but throughout the state. Now, in addition to that, we have a staff member, Amy Rake, who has been nominated as convener for the Australian Library and Information Association in the Disability Group. She's also going to be presenting, if she hasn't already, to the National Conference in May. And I'd just like to add that I think in this day and age, people feel that libraries are defunct, but I think libraries have morphed and developed and provide a lot more to the community than just somewhere to go and borrow books. And if anyone actually wonders what that is, pay a visit to the library and have a look and have a talk to them, and you'll realise just what a big part they actually play in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Coates. Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comment on the recommendation? Councillor Southwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a quick comment. I'd like to agree with Councillor Coates with her commending Kay and Amy on their positions. That's fantastic to see. I also just wish to commend the library for the introduction of the school readiness program. As a parent of a child who is 4 turning 5, this program will particularly help disadvantaged children in our community who may not have the chance to go to early childhood care or preschool. And it's so important for families in our region. It's focused on early literacy, numeracy, development and STEAM, and helping those that are heading off to school the following year. So we will actually be, as the report highlights, we'll be the first library running this in the state. So well done to all the staff involved. Thank you.
Further comment? There being no further comment, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. Councillors, we move on to item 11, and before I ask for a motion to close the meeting, I'll ask the General Manager, has there been any representations to hear any of the items in open council? There is no one in the public gallery, so councillors, could I have a...
Yes, I'm in the public gallery.
Sorry. Do you have any items on in closed council that you wish to raise in public? Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So I'll have a motion that we move into closed council. Councillor Betts, seconded Councillor Mead. Councillors, I'll ask for a motion to ask the General Manager to report on that. Well, I don't need a motion, but I'll...
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, this is the report from the closed session of the Ordinary Council meeting held on the 24th of May 2022. In closed council tonight, you considered 3 items, 12.1, 2 and 3, and for each of those reports you adopted the recommendations as per the business paper.
Councillors, can I have a motion to accept that report from the Generals? Councillor Mayor, second to Councillor Coates. Those in favour, say aye. Aye. Could we... That's the end of the meeting, so thank you. And we've got a couple of little things to talk about, so we might close those doors if we may.